Very good morning to each one of you here. My very respectful greetings to Principal Professor Dr. Mahesh Pai, all the resource persons and dignitaries, my colleague, friend and ex-student, Larissa Rodriguez. On my tongue it was always Larissa Castellino. All my teacher colleagues here, my fellow counselors, as well as my fellow students, because each one of us is a student for life. Some of you are in your formal training, and all the rest of us are in a continuous process of lifelong learning. So I have Western first. The reason is that the field of mental health and the field of, or the specific field of counseling is very well established in some of the industrially advanced countries of the world, and it is an emerging profession in our own country. So in the current times, mental health is going to become more and more and more the need of mental health professionals are going to be needed more and more, and mental health is going to continue to be a greater concern. There are innumerable reasons for that. We have an increase in individualism, even in collectivist cultures like our own. There is the base of religion and spirituality is showing varied faces, not necessarily to do with religion, that is reunion with the Supreme. We have increased consumerism, materialism, which again disconnects us from our inner peace. We have separatism, which is at micro levels within families, with divorce rates and separation rates so high, and at macro levels, separatism with everyone wanting to be having breakaway identities. We have a disconnect with nature. The concrete jungles of the world continue to grow. I love the freeway that got me to the circuit house so quickly, but that same freeway was at an angle where I couldn't see the terrain, which is so beautiful in Goa. So in the name of development, we are disconnecting from nature. Nature is also nature grounds us, so we are losing that grounding as well. Never mind the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic that has just, we are in the post-pandemic time, and physical health, mental health, therefore, need our most urgent attention. And all those of us, who are here, who are choosing life journeys or wanting to craft ongoing life journeys, we definitely need to dedicate ourselves to mental health. I want to share the 3 influences which have played a role in my work that I will be sharing with you today here. So one of them is that from 2014, I have been a key member of the editorial team of the British Journal of Guidance and Counselling, first as a book review editor, thereafter for a great number of years as one of the 2 chief editors, and currently I have reduced my work because of the dual roles that I have in my primary workplace, which is obviously in the College of Home Science, Nirmal and Ketan, affiliated to the University of Mumbai. So right now I'm a consulting editor. But from 2014 onwards, I've had the privilege of reading, research and practice trends in counseling, as they're emerging. I continue to be in dialogue with counselor professionals and counseling professionals and counseling scholars across the world, and especially in UK, Europe, Australia, South Africa, USA, of course, and the like. The second influence is I've been teaching counseling, so I'm a counselor educator, and the third influence is of my my own self as a counselor. Okay. So this is just, all those of you who are counselors here, you would obviously be familiar with a comprehensive definition of counseling. This is actually the opening sentence of the American Counseling Association's Code of Ethics. And I think it well captures the professional counseling as a professional relationship. I love the verb empower. Then again, diverse, and it's not just individuals, but it's also groups and communities, and to accomplish mental health, wellness, education, and career goals. What I find fascinating about counseling is that it is so well aligned. It goes hand in hand with leading with practicing a good life and living with optimal values. So counseling is founded in the ethical principles of trust, respect, autonomy, self-determination. The goals you work as for client empowerment, healing the client well-being. Psychoeducational focus, learning goal setting, problem solving, learning as a client to make well-informed decisions, learning self-compassion, and perspective taking and empathy. Frequently in my own practice as a counselor, the person is in distress because they have a distortedly negative view of themselves. That person is doing so much, but the mirror that they are looking into seems to point out at the one or two things that may not be working well, and not the whole image of whole picture of all that is the earnest efforts, the good achievements that actually comprise the whole of the person. And through exercises, one of the aspects of healing is to mirror back to the client or the person, and like the counselor is in awe of the person, the client to look at the mirror that the counselor is holding and to be in awe of themselves, because if the world would be a much better place if we all learn to be kind and more loving towards our own self. The irritability, all the sharp edges within us, which then come on the surface and cause the friction and harm as we negotiate and transact with others. In my work from 2014 with the British Journal of Guidance and Counseling, and working with counseling professionals and scholars in countries where counseling is a very established profession, it's very clear that the three most used approaches and models are person-centered therapy or person-centered counseling, so person-centered approaches, solution-focused therapy, also known, some people call it SFBC, solution-focused brief counseling, and CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy. These three are very, very prominently used, and I do want to share that the spectrum that I'll be covering are innovations from the last century which have sustained and continue to be most current and relevant today to some of the latest developments in counseling. All right, so going to the contributions of these three most used models, we start with PCT, the person-centered therapy, and you have the primacy of client autonomy and self-determination and the core conditions. I have a slide here which I'm not going to share these examples. If we have time, I will be very happy to share, but Otherwise, Howie Kirschenbaum is an emeritus counselor educator from the United States, whom I worked with personally. Virginia, actually, I haven't worked with personally, but I do use her work considerably in my life as a counselor educator. I'll just share in a sentence or two. I have the transcript, but I do not believe I have the time to share the transcript. So in one of the, and I'm not sharing from my own counseling experiences because I have not obtained written consent from my clients to do so. So unless I have written consent from my clients, I cannot share the transcripts. And this, what I'm sharing, is in the public published domain. So one of the clients that Howie Kirschenbaum had was an adolescent youth in a school who was being bullied and dragged and was ready to drop out of school, and he walks into Howie Kirschenbaum's office and says he's really had it and he's fed up and he's ready to drop school. So Howie Kirschenbaum says, I can see how distressing this is for you, and this youth is being dragged because he's keeping his hair long. Very cleverly, through the dialogue, Howie Kirschenbaum asks whether if everyone in the school grew their hair long, would you keep yours long or would you cut it short in order to make a statement? Because up until then, the youth was explaining how the rest of the boys who are ragging him are all crowd pleasers. And when he was asked that question, he said, initially he grew his hair long because he wanted to get back at his father who was controlling him, but now he really liked it. And then collaborative problem solving, where eventually the youth himself decides that he'll tie back his hair like he has seen some people do, and he's going to get a professional cut once he has the money to do so. The reason I thought this was important was typically in informal counseling, it would have been diverted completely to, oh my God, you can't leave school. Why are you saying you're going to leave school? Do you know how important school is? Because the youth starts out by saying that he is ready to quit school. But in professional counseling, with active listening, non-judgmentality, open space for receiving the distress of the youth was acknowledged, and a dialogue ensued which allowed the youth to manage and overcome the bullying in school in ways that brought well-being not just to the youth then, but by ripple effect to the boys who were harassing him. I won't go to the second example. Let's look at the core conditions, which are contribution of person-centered therapy and Carl Rogers. Congruence, UPR, that is unconditional positive regard, empathy, and the three are not separate but interrelated. Let's look at congruence first. So, congruence, one second, all right, okay. So, what is counselor congruence? So, as Carl Rogers has listed in his 6 conditions for therapeutic change, the counselor is congruent. Now, congruence is also known as genuineness, authenticity, honesty. Congruence, as we know, implies that there's a match between something. So what is the match? So the match is that what the counselor is experiencing within and what the counselor is expressing outside are matched. So there is it's not a facade, it's not a fake front. It's the genuine emotion and thoughts that the counselor is experiencing within, which are expressed to the client. Again, I want to remind you that the basic aspects of counseling go hand in hand with living with goodness. So, continuing, all right. So, inner experience and outer expression are matched. I've already shared. So, if the counselor is expressing warmth, it's not a social, polite warmth. Okay. So, all right, which is that social politeness, which in the emotional development literature is called dissemblance, actually, emotional dissemblance, where we show to others something that we are not experiencing within. So someone who otherwise, an example of incongruence in daily life, you're thinking that outfit is terrible, and the person, and instead you say, oh, how nice you're looking today. So or you are not feeling okay at all inside, and you say, oh, I'm doing really well. So, all right, I'm sure. So the counselor that I've already shared, let's continue. So this goes hand in hand with the counselor quality of warmth and non-judgmentality, but that does not mean that being congruent means all the time experiencing warmth inside. There could be frustration, there could be distress that the counselor also experiences. Congruence means that you express that, not in accusatory or harmful ways, but you do express it authentically. All right, let's see. I have shared all this. All right, so obviously, a counselor cannot be congruent without self-awareness. So continuously, the counselor has to be aware of their own inner self, inner dialogue, as well as what are they presenting to the world, or what are they presenting in a counseling session to the client. All right, I've shared this. So, on the other hand, Carl Rogers brought to our attention that the client is in a state of incongruence. In Barry Neil Kaufman, whose work also I find very inspiring, of course these are pseudonyms here, in his published descriptions of counseling episodes, describes a person called John, these are true episodes, who had been convicted, not just accused, of child physical abuse. And in a dialogue that he had with Barry Neil Kaufman, John mentions that he hates himself. So Barry Neil Kaufman asks him why, and he says, why do you ask me why? The whole world hates me. And so Barry Neil Kaufman says, that may be so, but I still want to know, why do you look upon yourself in this manner? And that begins a process of John experiences what the other core condition we are going to come up with, as they are all interlinked, unconditional positive regard, and that allows John to begin to examine his inner feelings. And he himself had been physically battered by an alcoholic father, and he had a mother who was in multiple sexual relationships, and would, in Barry Neil Kaufman's book, it is written, parade her multiple relationships in front of the child. And he was so scared that his daughter was going to follow the family mold, that he wanted to love and protect her, but he was doing the very opposite, which was, if she did not follow his instructions to the T, he would beat her up so badly that she needed hospitalization. And but once he was able to explore his inner self, that then brought peace to him, and thereafter he had no remission, and he and his daughter were able to live fruitful lives. That is one example of incongruence. We live in a world where frequently in communication we say the exact opposite of what we want to say. So There is a person, say in a marriage, say one of the partners is feeling unloved, but they desperately want to feel loved. So that, and they want the partner to be with them, but they scream and say, I want to be alone, get away from me, I don't need anyone in my life. Because this is another example of incongruence, where it's like a thorn in the paw of a bear, and the bear is hurting and hits out, and the person is hitting out and saying quite the opposite of what they are experiencing within. We have, all right, so therapist congruence, oops, what did I do now? Oh, please come back. Very good technology, I'm so grateful. All right, so therapist congruence is also a core condition for enabling positive change. It's all right, and the value that it goes hand in hand with is authenticity. So what I love about counseling, I know I'm repeating this, is it's not just something that works in the counseling dialogue, it is universally valuable. So, living an authentic life, and of course, being authentic within a counseling session. Going to empathy, first I would like to share what is empathy in the emotional development literature. A lot of this work is by Caroline Sarney from the United States. She's done amazing work. So now in the emotional development literature, empathy means feeling the same thing as another. It's feeling the same thing as another person. So if someone, a very early version of empathy is when one infant starts crying. If is there another child in the room, the other child will also start crying. And later in development, of course, when the child is older, if the friend is feeling sad, then the other child also starts feeling sad. That is empathy. And it is contrasted with sympathy. Sympathy is a derivative of empathy. Because we are able to feel as another feels, we can have concern, care for them. But although sympathy is a derivative of empathy, it is useful because while experiencing sympathy, you do not experience the same depth of emotion, and therefore you are not emotionally overwhelmed, and you're able to provide support. Now this work that I have just shared is from Nancy Eisenberg, also quite very powerful, very inspiring scholar from USA. Now both empathy and sympathy are valued in the emotional development literature, and empathy, by the way, is crucial for moral development and crucial for some lawful crucial for lawful societies, because otherwise, if we don't experience empathy, we would have no remorse or regret in harming another. And in fact, sociopaths or psychopaths have a failure in empathy development, possibly because of failed identification if we use psychoanalytical terms, failed introjection, and they can hurt another without any remorse, any regret. So empathy is very valuable, the feeling empathy, but what is empathy in the cognitive, in the counseling literature, is a cognitive understanding with some feeling in it, but it is not feeling the same emotion. If the counselor was to feel the same emotion as is empathy in the emotional development literature, the counselor would have a breakdown. There are so many, not all clients, but many clients are in distress. So if the counselor is having empathy as in the emotional development literature, the counselor would be equally in distress and there would be no transformation and no alleviation of distress. So what do we have here? We have, so empathy means that you are able to feel enough to understand the thoughts and emotions of the client as if they were your own, but not to be muddled with being your own. So this is very important. So while making sense of the client's emotions, you're able to take the perspective and understand it as if it were your own, but not your own. I will just go a little faster. We'll come to this where we have Carl Rogers. So it's an accurate cognitive understanding as well as an accurate emotional understanding of the internal frame of reference of the client. Internal frame of reference, because remember, the client is in a state of incongruence, and what may be on the surface may not be what is the inner experience. So this is very important. The helper does not lose oneself through identification, okay? But it is an as-if position that Carl Rogers described, as if it were your own, but not your own. So in 2015, when I lost my father, okay, he was 83 and a half, because first the lady at the hospital who was handing over the death certificate was very sympathetic. Then when she saw my father's age, she ceased to be sympathetic, because but for me it was devastating. It was a devastating loss. Now, if at the time I had students also who were going through different losses, maybe it could be a loss of a grandparent, loss of an uncle. So if I'm oh, sorry, but yeah, very good technology, like I said. It's not a touch me not, at least. It is very faithful and loyal. Thank you, dear. Okay, I do speak to objects, mind you, because I believe that everything needs love and care, including objects. So, going back to my example. Now, if I were counseling a student who had a loss, I make sense of her experience of grief as if it were my own, but I do not confuse it with my grief for my father. If I then start wallowing in my own grief for my own father, I'm no longer available. I'm in my own world of grief. So this is a very wonderful point that Carl Rogers had, okay, and it should not be, the empathy should not be muddled with your own emotions and own experiences from the circumstances in your life. So let's continue. All right. It's devoid of evaluation. It is one of the core conditions of therapeutic progress. I think we'll go ahead. Okay, one second. The value that empathy gives us, understanding. You know, I think we are so caught up each in our own mental world that we are totally sometimes not available to the other person. So empathy, the value of understanding. UPR, the third core condition, not that it is ranked as third, but the third in my presentation. It is a humanistic, it's considered to be a humanistic belief, attitude, quality, unconditional positive regard. So I will share, and we may not need, the whole point of unconditional positive regard dismantles the notion of deservedness, which is what society is built on. So in society, otherwise, someone has to deserve respect. But the point is that when someone does something wrong, and we heap criticism, we are like, we have shock, we have a range of negative negative judgments, ridicule, whatever, or a whole range. We are feeding negativity. Positivity can never, bloom from negativity. So it dismantles the notion of deservedness of respect, and it is I find it very spiritual, because otherwise we have saints and prophets and, for example, Jesus Christ and Gautam Buddha and Prophet Muhammad and all, who have similar ideas that everyone is deserving of respect regardless of what they have done in the past, what they are doing right now. So the behavior is not condoned, but the whole person is still considered worthy of respect regardless of any conditions attached. That still does not mean that the behavior which is harmful will be condoned or overlooked. So we have, let's see, so only if the counselor has faith in the client's goodness can the counselor help the person move to capitalize that goodness. If the counselor believes in, so I often ask this question, sorry, I'm cutting that sentence halfway, but I often ask my students this. If you believe that the world is populated of good people and evil people, counseling is not for you. Because if you wish to be a counselor, you need to believe and have steadfast faith in any and every person's goodness, regardless of how awful they may have been or their behaviors may have been. So I would say, even if there's a terrorist doing harm, for us to be saying, oh, how horrible he is, it's not going to work. Like even going to Barry Neil Kaufman's, that pseudonym of John, who had so horrifically physically molested his daughter multiple times. He had been labeled as horrible, and he believed he was horrible. Only in the context of unconditional positive regard was he able to look for his goodness within. So let's continue. So negativity harbors more negativity. When Trump used to say fire is to be dealt with fire, I was like, yeah, right, let's set fire around him and send more fire to him, and let's see how well he does then. Or set fire to one of his buildings that he owns and send more fire to that building. Of course, it should not be populated by people. We don't want them to be harmed. And let's see how well that works. So, all right, let's continue. So it is one of the core conditions of therapeutic progress, and it goes with the value of respect. UPR allows the client to respect their own self, and from that self-respect can a sapling be born, which is growing towards positivity and wholesome, fruitful actions and life. All three are interrelated. Obviously, congruence. All right, the inner experience should be an empathic experience. The outer experience should reflect that inner empathic understanding. Non-judgmentality and UPR are connected, and that UPR has to be experienced within and not just faked outside, and so on. I just wanted to share Carl Rogers' significant learnings, which are so aligned. His first learning was congruence itself, genuineness, authenticity, honesty. This is from his book published in 1950, and where he has, so I've excerpted some of his some of his learnings. So he said, I've not found it helpful or effective in my relationships with other people to try to maintain a facade. And by the way, relationships between parent, child, husband, wife, partners, work colleagues, the main reason is that one of the main reasons, the inner experience and outer expression are mismatched. Okay, so somebody whose marriage then did break down, I mean, I'll give you an example. The person was traveling back from out of the country and coming back late at night, and she actually wanted her husband to pick her up, but she told him, "It's okay, I will take a prepaid cab and come on my own." And she desperately wanted her husband to say, "Of course not, I will come and fetch you." But husband said, "Oh, okay." But the point is that authenticity is so important to living. Then the relationship's authenticity is dependent on each partner's authenticity. So it was his first significant learning. Accepting of self. You saw one of the quotations that was on the in the morning, what was playing on the screen. So he said, "I find I'm more effective when I can listen acceptantly to myself and can be myself." I'm going to go a little faster here because these are repeated ideas. Empathy was his central learning and significant learning number 3. And he said, "I found it to be of enormous value when I can permit myself to understand another person." And he said, "Is it necessary to permit oneself to understand another?" This is in the book. He says, "I think it is." Our first reaction to most of the statements which we hear from other people is an immediate evaluation, judgment, rather than an understanding of it. These are Carl Rogers' words. That's right, that's incorrect, that's stupid, that's not nice. It's not that we are saying it, it's happening in the running commentary within. But each of these understandings, if you permit yourself to understand another, change me, make me a more responsive person, more importantly, it permits the client to change. It permits them to accept their own fears and bizarre thoughts as well as their moments of courage and kindness and love. I'm going to go faster. Accepting of another person was his 4th learning. His 5th was non-directive, non-controlling, not being a quick fix provider, and trusting the process. So he said, the more I'm open to the realities in me and the other person, the less do I find myself wishing to rush in to fix things. His 6th was positive directional tendencies exist in everyone at the deepest level, and this set up UPR, that is unconditional positive regard, and he called this his deep learning. Okay, I'm moving to the solution-focused model, solution-focused therapy. So I want to share here that I've shared the innovations from PCT which are so meaningful as a practitioner and as a human being. Now, solution-focused approaches and cognitive behavioral therapeutic approaches share one thing. They both have exercises. Okay, so it's not just restricted to a dialogue, but they have exercises, and I find that very welcome component of counseling to be able to do exercises. So worksheets or thinking exercises. All right. So going to solution-focused therapy. Here the focus is on solutions rather than problems. It's an excellent therapy with regard to goal setting. As the seminars on integrative, I'm sharing the best of all the 3 worlds and then some latest developments. So the best of PCT, now the best of SFT. So goal setting is very well articulated in this therapeutic approach. You have strategies also like miracle question to facilitate goal setting. You have exception scaling, flagging the minefield, to name just a few. So let's look at goal setting. There are 3 types of unproductive client goals which are recognized in solution-focused approaches. Negative goals are, I don't want to fight with my mother. So it doesn't tell us what the client wants to do. It's a negative goal. It just tells, I don't want to fight with my mother. So it's considered to be an unproductive goal which has to be restructured in the counseling session. So instead of, I don't want to fight with my mother, oh, I want to have fun times with my mother. I want to be able to tell my mother about my day and share what is important to me. So concrete. We come to that. Harmful goals. I'm going to hit my friend and I'm going to stop talking to him as well. So harmful goals. I don't know goals. So what do you want? What is your goal this year? I don't know. Okay. So these are the 3 types of unproductive goals in solution-focused approach. On the other hand, goals have to be positive. So instead of the unproductive, it has to be a positive goal. So I'm going to say sorry to my friend, for example. It has to be observable. I'm going to study harder. I don't get any picture in my mind. Study harder means what? I'm going to visit the college library twice a week for half an hour each. And I'm going, in the library, I'm going to take out at least 1 book for any of my subjects and read the chapter for something that interests me from that textbook for half an hour. And that I'm going to, so that's observable. I'm going to study harder. It's not, what is that to be? It is specific and observable. I think and concrete, you get the, my example will work for all 3. It's behavioral. So in solution focus, the goals that are set are to do with behavioral changes, behaviors. So all the examples that I've given are behavioral, reduced to small steps. So now I'm going to study for 2 hours every week in the library. It's not going to happen. You're already, if I go to the strategy flagging the minefield, what's that? Anticipating what will sabotage your plan. But if you are planning, instead of taking 1 step at a time, you're going to plan to climb, and then obviously you're going to fall. So you have to reduce it to small steps. So 2 hours per day, no. All right, that could be the case after success with the half an hour, twice a week, then maybe 3 times a week, and so on. And ownership, goals that are set and by the client work best. Strategies, there's a skeleton key question here. So the Shaza is one of the theorists. There are multiple theorists for solution-focused approaches, including Kim and the Shaza. And here's the skeleton key question. So you have, I would like an example here. I would like to have you think about your life recently and the things that have happened to you that you would like to have happen more often in the future. So, because in solution-focused therapy, it is assumed that nobody's life is 100% negative. There are some good things happening. So you ask the client, what are the things that are working well for you and how can we make those happen more? Miracle question, which is which SFT or solution-focused therapy is very famous for. So some of the examples are here. Let's just look at one example. So if you were to wave a magic wand and wish all your problems away, what would we see you doing if we could videotape you for a day? So the whole emphasis is what would we see you doing. So if the person says, oh, I will say good morning, I normally don't even look at my mom and dad in the morning, but if this happens, I'll say good morning with a smile, and I'll say good morning to my father also. What's more, my younger brother, I will walk with him to school. So how is that used? Then that is used to extract goals. So instead of waiting for this miracle to happen, then you have solution focus is not 100% non-directive, so you actually give a homework to the client, and so you may ask the client to be saying good morning to the parents with a smile, and noticing how even that small step changes the client's life. I'm going to skip we go to this slide because that was for adolescents and it's okay, a bit of a repeat. So the miracle question shifts the focus to a positive future, and very importantly it allows extraction of goals, because what is it that the person would want to be doing if these problems did not exist? Exceptions is another strategy that solution focused therapy uses. Exceptions, there are examples here, okay? It refers to occasions in a client's life when that problem could well not be present, or at least present in reduced form. And why questions are not to be asked. It is all to focus on who, what, when, and where. For example, these are some examples. Are there times when the problem does not happen or is less serious? When, how does this happen? Suppose the youth is in conflict with the father. So if the youth says, oh, the other day when I was watching a cricket match with my father, we were both laughing and enjoying ourselves. So then the goal is set that, okay, sports is something that when it is to do with sports, the child and the father have a happy conversation and experience each other in warm ways. So increasing the occurrences of activities with the father, one small step at a time, which are sports related, which then later rubs off onto the entire relationship. Let's continue. Scaling. Scaling is another very important strategy in solution focused approach. Many scholars use a 10-point scale from 1 to 10. Some are also using an 11-point scale from 0 to 10. And in case the child, if suppose you, with regard to this problem, if 10 was where the problem was completely resolved and 1 was where the problem was in its worst form, where would you place yourself? Suppose the child says 5. So 5? Instead of saying 5, okay. The solution focused therapist has to say 5. Oh, can you tell me why you selected 5 and not 1? So there again, the first child or client has to identify what is working, and from that again the goals can be extracted. Let's continue. So there is a 10% improvement strategy also. If the child has said 5 or the client has said 5, you ask what could you be doing to move from 5 to 6? It's a small step. 5 to 6, not 5 to 10. What will you do in order to be at 10? No, only a 10% improvement. Okay, now going to cognitive behavioral therapy. It's very vast, but one of the founders is Albert Ellis, and I've used some of his words, some of his work. So anyway, thoughts, by the way, human beings, we have the capacity to think, but our thoughts can be our best friends, but our thoughts can be our most cruel enemies as well. So, but if it's a thought in your head, all right, You can revisit it and revise it. All right, and emotional well-being, Albert Ellis said, is achieved if thoughts are altered. Again, this therapy uses exercises, worksheets, and REBT is what Albert Ellis is famous for, that is rational emotive behavioral therapy. So, when he promoted his ideas way back in 1956, this is an innovation coming from 1956, continuing to be sustained. His ideas were considered very radical and revolutionary and rebellious. So he rejected the need to locate the cause of the client's problem in the childhood, or he rejected the need to delve into the unconscious. So I have a quotation here. I will continue to the last point on this slide. He instead promoted psychoeducational techniques. In the psychoeducational technique, learning how to dispute thoughts which are interfering with well-being, that is irrational thoughts. So from his own childhood, Albert Ellis had a life of trials and tribulations. As a young child, he was an inpatient in a hospital, and he was in a ward with other children. All other children, the parents were gushing and coming. I mean, they were coming every evening, gushing, bringing gifts, bringing some things which the child could eat. But Albert Ellis' parents were not visiting him, and but he decided, while he was yearning for love and care from his parents, as a child, he decided to stop his self-pitying thoughts. And instead he said to himself, only because I'm deprived of the love that other children enjoy, I'm able to think differently. And that makes me a special person. So he turned his adversity into an opportunity, which is amazing. Now, as a youth, he struggled with multiple aspects. He was not healthy. He felt that his personality was absolutely flawed, and he felt he was not good looking. He had insomnia. He had what today would be diagnosed as social anxiety disorder. He was reminded of the ancient Roman philosopher Seneca's words, "We suffer more in imagination than from reality." And that's where he evolved the strategy of disputation and redirected thoughts to free himself from anxiety. So throughout the disappointments and setbacks in his life, he made continuous efforts to remake himself. And so he was a living example of his own therapy. And each one of us actually in every moment have the opportunity to remake ourselves. And as facilitators, when we are mental health professionals, counselors, special educators, we have the privilege of helping someone remake their own self. I will go ahead because of time. This is a strategy that I use. It's so easy to feel mad, bad, sad. It's all jumbled together. The sadness and the anger, and then it makes you feel so miserable. But if you switch thoughts until you feel deep peace within, you achieve well-being. I just want to, one second, I do realize that the ABC theory of Albert Ellis I skipped. So which is very famous for A for activating events, and B for belief systems, and C for consequences. All right. That I really appreciate, awfulization. So we awfulize our feelings, such that and circumstances and thoughts until we feel more and more and more awful. So awfulization. So in therapy, in counseling, the irrational beliefs have to be disputed in order to not awfulize. So that's a great innovation. In multiple therapies, including cognitive behavioral therapies. We lead scripted lives, and we have to learn to unscript ourselves. We have, why a script? It's a stereotypic character. I am the helpful person, and because you've scripted yourself as a helpful person, you're feeling resentful and exploited at times. So, but we need to live spontaneous. Counseling and psychotherapy allows us to unscript ourselves and live joyously in the moment. And that is why I must tell you, one of the developments, not in the last century, but more so in this century, is the growth of mindfulness-based techniques. Writing and rewriting the story of our life. We are the architects of our life, and our role as a facilitator in mental health is for the person to be empowered to know how to recraft their life stories. Okay, right. I also wanted to briefly bring up the developments in the school counseling field, but these also go back to Norm, N-O-R-M. His full name is Norman Gisbers, J-Y-S-B-E-R-S, but he's known as Norm Gisbers. His work was in the last century, but continues to dominate the field. So unlike a counselor situated in a clinic, if you're situated in an educational setting, preventive and developmental goals become hugely important along with remedial. Then the focus is proactive and programmatic and not only reactive and putting out fires. Counseling has multiple C's in school counseling. So you have counseling, of course, but you have consultation, because there are multiple stakeholders in educational settings like schools and colleges. You have collaboration with multiple professionals and stakeholders, coordination, and curriculum, because you have a proactive guidance curriculum. The counselor working with children or youth works in large groups, which could be in the school or college auditorium, but also with class groups or with small groups where you use group counseling as well as individual counseling. So these are innovations in the school counseling field. Now going to some latest trends. So the American Counseling Association's Code of Ethics in 2014 in the earlier version had 8 sections. But the 2014 version has 9 sections because, voila, they've added in 2014 a new section. It is section H, because the last one it's the penultimate one, it's the second last one, because the last one from the previous version still remains the last, and they have added this as the second last one, the penultimate one. Distance counseling, technology, and social media. So the technological advancements and the advancements in communication technologies, and we will also see in marketing technologies as well shortly, have impacted the mental health field, and it is not necessary for counseling to only be face-to-face. In our country, this has happened more so because of COVID, and I have done a research with my students, the findings of which I will share with you. But in the Western advanced, industrially advanced countries, I always qualify, because there is no country that can say they are developed. We have issues in every country of the world because we are universally human beings. They are not descended from some other planet. Although sometimes, just an anecdote, once when I was a PhD student, I lost power because there was a major storm. So I called up the electrical services and I was like, I don't have power! This is United States of America! They said they'll repair it in 1 or 2 days. What are you talking about? United States of America, 2-3 days. Madam, the tree has fallen over the electric pole, we can do nothing. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay. It was a kind of like, yes, we are all in the same world, although we may sometimes believe that, you know, only in India things are inefficient and other countries they are full of efficiency. Nothing like that. Anyway, in industrially advanced countries of the world, around the turn of the century, teletherapy, e-mental health, etc. started, whereas for us it is more recent. So, but it's still the 2005 Code of Ethics did not have that section because it was just emerging at the time. It is the 2014 Code of Ethics of the American Counseling Association that included this. I want to share one or two things from the ACA code. So counselors understand that counseling is no longer limited to in-person, face-to-face interactions, and understand the evolving nature of the profession with regard to distance counseling, technology, and social media, and how these resources can be optimized for use with clients. And by the way, also what are the challenges and pitfalls that could occur in the use of these methods, which include both synchronous and asynchronous, which I'm coming to. So synchronous is where it's happening in real time at the same time, and asynchronous is with a time lag. So email is under asynchronous. And telephone hotlines obviously are synchronous, but in telephone hotlines, you don't have the same person talking. Every time you call, the person will change. Email also, it need not be the same therapist replying each time. But email is asynchronous, telephone hotlines is synchronous, SMS services and chat services are synchronous, but you talk to a different person each time. And video conferencing, as you know, is synchronous. And the latest developments include avatar technology and the use of virtual environments and mobile apps. More on that coming up. So what is online therapy? So use of, okay, go a little faster. I think that here this maybe use of internet to connect mental health professionals to clients. That's part of online therapy. And this is already shared. Let's see. Let's go to the terms because rest I've shared already. Teletherapy, cyber therapy, e-counseling are all terms used in this context. The broad area is telehealth, which is considered to be the next big frontier in the delivery of healthcare, and e-mental health. So I'll share about the research. So in the research that I've done with my students about the use of online counseling in India, but most of our counselors were from Mumbai. So 27 counselors and 28 clients. The clients were not necessary clients were a different group and counselors were a different group. So let us continue. So only 59% of the counselors said that they had before using online counseling, during COVID times, 59% of them said they had prior training in online therapy. I do want to say in the world, we have online therapy courses, meaning that you can study it online, but you need to be having a certain level of completion of counselor qualifications in order to register for those courses. So I have colleagues and friends who run courses which are internationally recognized for becoming an online therapist. Anyway, coming here, 59% of the counselors had prior training, and 56% had prior experience, and 50% of the clients had no prior experience of online counseling. Hybrid mode was most common, and synchronistic counseling sessions through video conferencing was most common, using Zoom platform, for example. Extent During the pandemic, all the counselors had used online counseling, and right now, moderately, the use was moderate post-pandemic, and that's where the hybrid comes in. Preferred mode, video conferencing was a preferred mode, and clients also, most clients preferred video conferencing. Effectiveness, they said, was moderate. Satisfaction, they said, was they were very satisfied, not extremely satisfied. This was a mode. Of course, you can see the distribution. Benefits, and there's a lot in the research, I've only taken a few findings. Benefits and opportunities in online counseling were listed by counselors and clients. So counselors, for example, said they were no longer limited to clients in Mumbai. They were able to counsel clients from many other places distant from Mumbai. So that was, and in fact, they had clients from outside India also. And the flexibility in scheduling. And clients also mentioned flexibility, and they liked that they had the freedom to text the counselor when they felt the need to text the counselor. Going to new approaches, what is avatar-based counseling? So this is one of the scholars I have worked with, Cooper, Mick Cooper. And so what is this avatar? It is not the God ka avatar in Hindu mythology. It is, neither is it the avatar movies, avatar and whatever they pronounce it as, Himalaya and avatar and, okay, anyway. What it is creating a virtual representation of, so a virtual environment. ProReal is one of the software that is used, and in the researches and dialogue that I've had with this scholar and his team, they have used this software called ProReal, and the two populations that I know they've worked with are many, but the two that I know of, school population and prison population. So a virtual environment is there through this software, and the client can create their character and other characters, and then has a dialogue with, there are many ways of using it, but one of the ways is that has a dialogue about the characters in the virtual environment with the counselor. And so this helps the person, the client, express things which they are not able to articulate without the medium of this virtual environment. It gives the it's found to be very useful, and avatar-based counseling is one of the latest innovations in counseling in the world. So, all right. Now, another one, apps are being used, mobile phone apps in counseling, and in cognitive behavioral therapy, it is used for homework exercises, but in the author and his team that I worked with from Australia, Phillips et al., published in 2020, so this is pre-COVID. Marketing technology is now being used in mental health. So the marketing technology is using what is known as location technology. That means that, you know, like Google asks you whether you will give permission to share your location, because then they will have the options which are close to you, you know. And so location-based technologies which are used for marketing are now being used for e-mental health. So in this particular scholar, practitioners, what they did was they worked with counselors who are working with clients with drug and alcohol use issues and problems. And so if the person, the client, was near the bar where they would possibly break down their self-set goal and self-set strategy and go in there and then have no limit to drinking, you know, in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, DSM, substance use, one of the key characteristics is that the person doesn't have control over stopping the consumption of that substance. So location-specific technology, then the phone will give a notification that is framed in a way to remind the client of the commitment to not engaging in substance use. So they worked with several counselors who were working with clients with drug and alcohol use, substance use. So, and they found it to be very fruitful. So, mind you, I just will. I'm about to finish. 5 minutes or three. Okay, I'm almost done. So. Mindfulness-based techniques have become very manifest in the Western world, and obviously, you know, this is application of Buddhist practices. Distress is frequently because we are lost in the past, okay, where something nasty happened and we are ruminating and regurgitating it in our minds over and over again, or we are lost in an imaginary future which is populated with all kinds of horror, you know, horrific things that are going to happen, you know, failure and job loss and whatever. So even in mindfulness-based techniques, you locate yourself in the here and now. Going fast, one of nature therapy is another very important innovation. It includes ecotherapy, adventure therapy, wilderness therapy, but and there are various theories. I won't go into them right now. And the green care movement, which is part of this. So nature therapy is outdoor therapy, but it's practicing therapy in outdoor natural spaces. Right when I began my presentation, I shared that we are disconnecting from nature, and that is also creating distress and lack of well-being. And this therapy is, some examples of this therapy include psychotherapy within a gardening context. It includes nature therapy and nature as a third party, as a co-therapist. This is Berger's work. Adventure and wilderness therapy is different. It is situated in natural spaces, outdoors, and it is overcoming challenges, learning to overcome challenges through adventure tasks like canoeing or mountain climbing and so on. All right, it's which has been used successfully with at-risk youth and treatment-resistant youth, largely used with youth. Just last two slides. So for my personal style as a counselor, for me, it's a space for healing. It's a prayerful and sacred space. I do pray internally before starting my counseling session. The whole focus is on client empowerment. 3 parts to the session. So you have an opening exploration. The middle part, I normally use exercises, and in the summary and having the client share what they got from the session in the terminating final part. I frequently use empathy exercises, empathy building exercises, gratitude and appreciation exercises, daily routine analysis, goal setting, and so on and so forth. Lastly, I urge one and all here to develop your personal style as a counselor and therapist. And you know, so I would like to end that I'm very grateful that I have had this opportunity today, but I'm also very grateful that in life I can be a counselor and a counselor educator, and because the values that I hold in life are very much aligned with the values which are the foundation of counseling. Thank you so much.